We got to keep increasing income. We got to match inflation, or beat inflation, right? It's like, dang, we're going to have to keep either investing time or investing money. Both is a lot, both in high volume, to just be okay, to not get late notices on anything, to make sure our credit stays okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got to do so much, put so much time and effort, and sometimes money, into making sure we can just, get as close as we can to that 5%, as close as we can to that 1%, which is just, it's almost not possible. Almost. That's why 1% is the 1% for a reason. You get what I'm saying? Average American, and I'll say average American parentheses family, in parentheses, needs to make at least $250,000 a year. Guys, we're talking about gross. We're talking about gross, right? So the average American, parentheses, household, and parentheses, needs to net around $180,000 to $190,000 a year to be okay. And this is for a family of 3 to 4 living moderately, living at means, if not below means, which a lot of people can't do. This is essentially lower middle class to upper middle class range around that income, And I'm like, dang. I look at places like Hawaii, California, and the more the northern places, obviously like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, places where you gotta make $350,000 to $400,000 to be okay. Basically, right? That 50, 30, 20 rule from a financial perspective, from a I can afford life now and afford life later perspective. 50, 30, 20, which most people can't even do anywhere around the world, especially in an opportunistic place like America. We can't follow that 50, 30, 20 rule, where 50% of your income net, that's what actually, you spend net income, not gross. 50% of your net income is toward housing. 30% is basically the other bills / your overall cost of living in conjunction to that 50% towards housing. And the 20% is savings / investing. 50, 30, 20 rule. So for everybody to follow 50, 30, 20 rule, week to week, month to month, year to year, and decade to decade until retirement, if that's possible, which for most people isn't, for us to follow that 50, 30, 20 rule, our average income has to be a stackable, or at least a maintained amount of $250,000 per year. The average American household must make $20,000 a month to afford bills on time, to maintain credit, or get to a point where they can maintain good to great credit, and then to be able to save for a retirement, right? / emergency fund, right? That 20% can be broken up, maybe 10% retirement, 10% emergency fund, 15% retirement, 5% emergency fund, you know what I'm saying? And then I look at the stats. Well, if the average American needs to make that, then we're screwed. We're SCREWED. We're screwed. If the average American household needs to make that, and it shows, right? It obviously shows. The average American household, right, is touching 100 to 120,000 average, not median, and it's skewed. It's skewed heavily. We're so far behind. Inflation, taxes, insurance, all this stuff has surpassed actual compensation, actual wages. It's ridiculous. It's insane, guys. Some of the places in the Midwest and some like kind of in the, you know, the Northeast, a few places in the South, right? You can get away with hitting that 50, 30, 20 rule, you know, consistently or aggressively even, because you could, you know, in comparison to the other states I mentioned, you know, your income can be half of that, can be. And guys, it's all about lifestyle choices. It's all about sacrifice. It is truly, you know, if you want to retire on time, if not early, if you want to afford things, you can't live above your means, right? You may think you want a 4 or 5 bedroom, or you can afford a 4 to 5, or purchase a 4 to 5 bedroom, but you can actually only afford and or need a 2 or 3 bedroom. You get what I'm saying? So, because if you're talking about housing, you're talking about a cost that forces you to make a certain amount of income forever. You guys get what I'm saying? Basically forever. Even, you know, we talk about interest and all that stuff. 30 years is forever, you know. 30, like, it can make and break people. Like, it keeps people working even in retirement age because of housing costs, renting or having a mortgage. Housing costs. And at this point, renting and having a mortgage is almost the same because property taxes and insurance is out the roof. Of course, with interest rates. So it really doesn't matter. If you're not making close to $300,000 in the States, guys, we're screwed. It's plain and simple. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. Let me know in the comments, is this what you're feeling? Let me know in the comments if you're getting by on less than that with a family of 3 to 4 plus dependents. And then share what your strategies are, right? You know, are you living, because it's possible. But, you know, we need live examples and testimonies about this, because it's possible to live at 80,000 or 100,000 with 1 or 2 children if certain things aren't happening. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's extremely possible. But I'm not talking about what's possible. I'm talking about what's happening. I'm talking about the average. The average doesn't denote to what's possible. The average is statistical facts of what's going on right now. And everybody's doing different things, and this is the average. The average American household is 40 to 50% behind the margin curve of what livable wages should look like if we want to afford life now and afford life later. Now in work, later post work. But what's happening is because we can't get to that divide, or we can't get to that marginal increase for post work, right? We're stuck with having to always maintain income to just keep us afloat, even in retirement age. And that's the income that we have, right? Or the nest egg of capital that we keep or save while we're at work. And so what I'm saying is, guys, like, we're not basically making enough, or we're living above our means, because there's people who are making 200,000 or 300,000 and living like they're making 400,000 to 500,000. So people who are making that above average income, that income that needs to be average, right? They're still living above their means. So it doesn't really matter. Follow that 50, 30, 20 rule and break it up accordingly. You know, if you want to be more aggressive with saving or investment, then that can raise, you know, to 30 to maybe 35% of your income, and your housing decrease. Your housing don't have to be half your income. That's something like, even when you listen to financial advisors or like an average, you know, like if you always listen to things that are generalized, you know, it may screw you up. It doesn't work for everybody. You know, this is all marginal perspective. This is a starting point, you know. Even when I'm saying the average income, because by the math, that's the average income. But the average income, though, you don't have to make $250,000. That's what I'm saying. Like, everything can be marginal. Everything could be subjective. You know, you can play with the numbers. But at the end of the day, the goal is to live at means, if not below means. We're trying to live at means, or most of the time above means, honestly. Like, if you guys look at this video and then pause it or stop it, whether you get to the end or not, and look around. Look, you know how much your income is after taxes. You know how much you can save, or you know how much you are saving. And then you know how much stuff you've accumulated from a material perspective. You know how much stuff you accumulated from a debt perspective, right? Car notes, mortgages, jewelry, clothes. How much do you eat out compared to cooking or meal prepping? Membership, subscriptions. We know how much all this is costing. And 90+% of people in America, this is what's powerful and pivotal, or should be pivotal for a turning point for most of us. 90% of Americans are living above their means at any income level. It doesn't matter. And it's very systematic. It's very systematic, but somebody has to talk about it. You know, we keep talking about how wages should increase. We got to beat inflation, right? We have job loyalty. We have all these degrees. We have experience. Why can't we match our experience, our time on a job, our education with livable wages, especially in a time to where everything is more expensive? Why can't we do? Well, there's certain people who can. There's certain people who are opportunistic in increasing their income. But at the same time, most people at any income level, whether maintain or increase, right? Say I get an increase, I've been making $50,000 a year for 5 years, and then year 6, I start making $100,000. Well, the problem is my bills don't stay the same when I doubled my income. That's the problem. So we want to talk about increasing wages, but we're kind of forgetting about that general 50-30-20 rule. Limit residual debts. We are wanting to increase our income, or we have the capability to. We're fortunate. It's one thing to keep a job in the United States right now. All these layoffs are happening. It's another thing to keep a job and get promoted on your job, you know? So, you know, there's a sense of security compared to, you know, another group who's getting laid off. But then you're buying more, you're spending more. You're putting yourself more in a liable situation. So I want to add that caveat. We're spending too much. So people are going to always think they need to make more money because they're spending more. Because they got to a point where they're making more. Whether it's on the one job they have, you know, or, you know, they have 2 or 3 different, you know, incomes, you know, whether it's jobs or, you know, just income, right? So I want people to understand that, you know. I want people to get it. Although by the numbers, although by the statistics, right, we should be making upper $200,000 a year. In certain states, unfortunately, our income for us to afford life now and afford life later, now in work, later post-work, retirement, i.e., we got to be making in some states $300,000+ a year. But look past it. Because if we can only touch 150,000, then we got to work with that. If we can only touch 82,000, then we got to work with that. If we can only touch 205,000, then we got to work with that, right? We may have to downsize. We may have to lose friends. Y'all not really hearing me. We may have to tell friends, I can't live this way anymore. We may have to stop helping certain family members. Nobody really talks about this stuff, you know? People give. Whether it's negligent, you know, or for depreciating matters, always with pure intention, trying to help out somebody else. But guys, at the end of the day, this is a rat race for a reason. It's a matrix, it's a system for a reason. There's clogs in the system. Your family members and friends are part of that. You may think they always need help, but I'm like, dang, what are they doing for themselves? Or, you know, people start feeling guilty because it's like, man, you're trying to focus on the financial setup for you and yours, immediate family. That's part of that liability building too that we're doing, you know. We're always trying to help and give other people when it's a struggle just to help ourselves. So, let me know in the comments if this is what you think. Do we need to make that much money a year? Especially under the administration of Trump, right? You know, is this where we have to get to? Is this where the new middle class has to get to? Because it's disappearing. Middle class 5 to 10 years ago, right? I mean, we could be making $80,000, $90,000 a year and basically be middle class, you know, maybe upper middle class because of cost of living, guys. Cost of living. I remember when I moved to Florida in 2016, and this is some real stuff, man. And I was like 23, 22, whatever age I was. And then I think the year after, in 2017, my wife and I was like, let's just look at the homes around here, you know? And it's crazy, like, if you guys are familiar with Southern homes, we could get a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, newly built home. Guys, newly built home for $140,000 to $150,000. If you want a bigger lot or maybe some upgrades or whatever with appliances, I mean, you're touching maybe $160K, guys. $160K. Interest rates is floating around 4.5% to 5% at that time. So you're talking about a possible mortgage, guys, that we could have gotten for $900 to $1,000 a month. Now, we couldn't afford that. I mean, because I'm still in school. But I'm glad I was able to see that, because today, you're talking about 10 years later, that same home is costing $500,000 to $600,000 a year. So the price on everything has increased, but our wages don't match that. And that's the problem. That's why we need to, that's why we got to make so much money. But knowing we have to make so much money and then actually making so much money, it's two different things. It's two different worlds. And that's not the case. Everything's getting more expensive. I get that. But we do two things. We continue to sacrifice materialistic / liability / depreciating, purchases in America, or we leave. Whether we can maintain our income or take a pay cut, we leave America, right? How bad do you want to live comfortably, right? Afford housing, main thing, afford your overall cost of living, basically secondary or 1B, and then really save and invest into your long-term future, especially post-work. That's where we have to start thinking about, guys. So if this is your first time seeing Black, please hit a sub. Please like. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm talking off of experience. I know nothing about finances. I'm talking from experience, and I'm talking about things I see. That's it. That's it. I just want people to start being thought-provoking in their life and, what they want to do with their time during work and after work from a financial standpoint, because it's serious. Finances affect our life, unfortunately. But it's a stronghold, especially being in America. So we got to figure it out, keep maneuvering. Anyway, talk to me in the comments. Share this video if it's somewhat insightful. I don't know. And we'll talk to y'all later.